Take it easy and solve the school lunch problem with SPAM. S-P-A-M.
こんにちは、タイガークローラジオ。You are listening now. Fuck J.
You are listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Number one in vintage computer and video game entertainment. And now your host, Critical Failure.
Hey, Tiger Claw Radio, everybody. That's it. You guys are listening to episode 238 of Tiger Claw Radio. This week, I want to talk a bit more about... Of course, we're going to talk a bit more about the Sega Saturn. What a huge thing that was to get a Saturn. And this week, the big thing is, okay, I got a Saturn. What do I do with it? Where do I go from here? Apart from that, also the GOG.com summer sale, which is the big one for the year. That's in motion, so I got to look that over, picked up a couple things. We'll talk about that later on as well. And much later in the podcast, I go into City Builders a little bit. You guys like City Builder games? I don't know. Bear with me because we're going to talk about it. Let's kick things off with Winter Chip 13. Now, when the Winter Chip competition over on Battle of the Bits was going on, I was covering it. I was playing a few of the picks, a few of the submissions that I liked. But they just recently came out with the album, and it was $1 for a while. And then in the 1st of June, it went to free. So now you can get the Winter Chip 13 album, which is 50 songs, 50 of the 180 submissions there were, for free. So go get it now, because typically the way they do it is it only stays free until the next album comes out, and then it gets a price tag. So we'll play a few tracks from that, and this will probably be the only week I do these Winter Chip 13 tracks, because I covered this when they were actually being submitted, but we'll check out some of that as well. All right, boys and girls, you're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Let's get it going. That's from Tobakomi from the Winter Chip 13 compilation. Now, I couldn't tell you the name of the song because it was written in another language, but Tobakomi makes that. And that, I gotta say, that sounds more chippy than a lot of the music that we've been playing lately. A lot of the chip tunes equals win stuff, a lot of the fake bit stuff. That has much more of an authentic chiptune vibe to it. But I gotta say, listening to this Winter Chip 13 album, it's cut down the middle, I would say. The styles are so... I mean, there's 50 tracks, and they're all from different people, so the styles are really, really diverse. But it's nice to hear... it's nice to hear like an authentic chip sound from a new release. We're gonna go to the first Vancast of the week now. I did this on Tuesday. And I can't remember why it was I didn't do one on Monday. There was a very specific reason. Like, I think I opened the Saturn before that, and I wanted a day to just take it in rather than just shoot from the hip. So this is Tuesday. Now Tuesday I was really thinking, okay, now what do I do? And then I talked about a little bit about the GOG summer sales, because they just hit as well. So Tuesday was a big day. All right, and here we are, back on Tuesday morning. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. It's the Vancast. It's Tuesday morning. What's going on, everybody? I hope you're having a good week. It's chilly this morning. I don't know what happened. It's June. It's been burning up outside, and just one morning just made the decision. Now I have to have a sweatshirt on because it's chilly in June. What are you gonna do? That's the weather, right? I guess. So I finished up last week on fire for the Sega Saturn, and the Sega Saturn was all I could think about. As I finished my work week, I remember sitting in my office, just like, oh man, Sega Saturn. I haven't procured any new Saturn-related items, so I thought that might be a good topic of discussion. Because my problem with the Sega Saturn is that I'm dealing with something that I've been ignoring the Saturn for so long. Now I'm dealing with something I don't really know a lot about. So I thought it might be worth it to go over some of the things I think are worth owning. And some of you guys out there who are really knowledgeable about the Saturn can chime in and we can compare some notes. I want to make a video about this, like a shorter, more concise video on my YouTube channel, because I know there's a couple of Saturn guys out there who leave comments every once in a while who don't necessarily listen to the podcast. But anyway, we'll go over it. So first and foremost, I think it's normal when you get a system that you had a long time ago to go after the games you used to have. That's normal. So that means, like, automatically I'm looking at Virtual On, Cyber Troopers, disc only, which is fine because that's what I had. I also had Street Fighter Alpha. Those are the two games I remember playing. I also want to get Soviet Strike and Daytona USA because I ordered those I ordered those 15 plus years ago, and then my machine broke while they were in the mail. So that's 4 off the bat to look for. Now there's a few multi-port games that I just want to own the Saturn version for. The original Resident Evil was a hugely important game for me in my development. Hugely important. Playing the original Resident Evil was an experience. Seeing that game for the first time was an experience I'll never forget. It definitely left an impression. I didn't get used to horror movies and that sort of stuff. I didn't get desensitized where I could take in horror until later, I think, than most kids. And that game came out in 1996, 1997. I think it was 1996, but you'd have to double check that. Anyway, I remember being freaked out in the best way by the original Resident Evil. I would love to have the Saturn version. I used to have the big box PlayStation version, but I don't anymore. So we got Resident Evil, and then there's Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider, the first one, which I know came out in 96. That's another game that was like, I can't possibly describe the impact of the original Tomb Raider. And I know that series went on forever, right? And they're still making them. The first one, nothing came close to the impact of the first game. Playing that first game, hitting the 3rd level, sitting there with my brothers, the first moment the T-Rex came out, and we all jumped because nobody saw it coming. And we all jumped so much so that nobody could point and laugh at each other. We because we knew we were all guilty. So that's a game I'd like to own on the Sega Saturn. I'm told that the Tomb Raider was originally developed to be a Saturn exclusive, and they pulled out of that deal when the Saturn started to go downhill. That's what I'm told. I haven't done that research on my own, but that's an interesting story. So we got Tomb Raider, Resident Evil, and we got Virtual On, Cyber Troopers. We got Street Fighter Alpha 1. And we got Soviet Strike. We got Daytona USA. Guardian Heroes is another big one. Guardian Heroes shows up on a lot of people's lists of stuff they want to get for the Sega Saturn. That was a game I had on I had my sights on when I had my original Sega Saturn. I never bought it, but I had my sights on it.
What I did buy was the 6-player adapter for the Saturn. I don't think I'm going to go after that now. There's no reason to own a multi-tap, because I rarely get to play local multiplayer, and when I do, it's only ever with one other person. But I bought that 6-player multi-tap for the Sega Saturn, trying to collect the parts to do a great big game of Guardian Heroes. I never got to use it even once, but I did own it. Because I remember... Oh, there's a deer in the road. I remember that my friend owned Guardian Heroes, and what I was hoping was that he would come over, bring his Guardian Heroes, I'd have the multi-tap, we'd pool our controllers, all the kids from the neighborhood would come by, and we'd have ourselves a party. Never happened with the Sega Saturn. We did that a lot with other games, where just all the kids from the neighborhood would come by, and we'd jam out in a game. That happened quite a few times. In PlayStation games and a couple of Nintendo 64 games. The ones I remember the most was we did 4-player games of Quake 2 on the Nintendo 64. I didn't have GoldenEye, so Quake 2 was the game we did. And we were the stereotypical house that we had the one gimped up controller. So whenever the kids all got together, it was like nobody wanted to be the guy who would use the blue controller, because we knew that the analog stick didn't work. We did that, and we also played a lot of WWF Warzone on the PlayStation 1, which wasn't 4 players, I don't think, but we would hot swap the controllers, do a little hot seat gaming, which was fun. But bringing it back to the Sega Saturn, yeah, so Guardian Heroes, it's kind of like an unrealistic pick for a couple of reasons. I know it's expensive, for one. For two, I've already got it on the Xbox 360. I don't play my Xbox 360 much, but Guardian Heroes, the fact that I have that off of Xbox Live, that's one of the reasons why I maintain my 360. It's plugged in, it's up and running, I can turn it on whenever I want, I can play some Guardian Heroes. Never played any huge multiplayer games in that either, but I have done a little 2-player, which is fun. That's a good game. It's a good game. Should play that again, it's been a while. Last time I played Guardian Heroes was at MagFest, I think 2 years ago. Maybe 3 years ago. And then we get into the games that are tons and tons of money. Radiant Silvergun. Be fun to play. Yeah, good luck. There was a game that I played that my friend had when I was a kid called I believe I'm gonna botch the name. I know it, but it was one of those Shining games, like Shining Force and Shining in the Darkness. Shining in the Holy Ark, I believe it was called. And I got to play it once. Oh, there's more deer on the road. Look at this. There's 2 deer in the road. They're like walking parallel to the road. A mama and a little baby. Little baby fawn with the dots on it. Polka dots. I remember in environmental biology, they told me that when people smoke while they drive and throw their cigarettes out the window, the deer come and eat the cigarette butts, and then they get hooked on nicotine. So then what you have is deer foraging on the side of the road for cigarettes because they're hooked on nicotine. I think that's hilarious. What was I talking about now? Something about the Sega Saturn. I don't know. I've got other issues too. I want to get a second controller. I've only got one controller. And I think a big part of what's going to make this system awesome is playing with my son. That's a big thing, and it's going to affect the games that I decide to purchase as well. Like Street Fighter Alpha 1. We could play that head-to-head. You know? It's just a Street Fighter game. He's getting, he's not a newborn anymore. We could play a little Street Fighter, I think. I made my son wait longer to play fighting games than I think most people would think. he's 8 now, and I've only let him play fighting games a couple times. And here's the reason why. It's not because it's because of his particular case. When he was 2 years old, right? And we had the Sega Dreamcast fired up. And I had one of the Marvel vs. Capcom games. I think it was the original Marvel vs. Capcom on the Sega Dreamcast. And he was 2 years old. Now, let's be fair. He's 2. I know he's not going to be memorizing move lists and that sort of stuff. But it's just like, hey, let's look at the colors. There's lots of bright drawings of cool superheroes and stuff in this game. Let's just share this together and just look at it. We'll take it in as much as a 2-year-old can. And man, he dug it. He really dug it. But he got overexcited, and the first thing he did, like minutes into the game, was he got bah! And he lifted up his controller and he hit me with it. And it hurt, man. Dreamcast controllers are big. Those things are no joke. If you think I'm joking, give a Dreamcast controller to one of your friends and tell them to hit you with it. Right on the shoulder. So after that, I was like, you're not quite ready for this, I don't think. And then, I don't think we ever really took fighting games on, like, head on after that. I remember playing Street Fighter V with him once or twice, but it's hazy. I don't know. I'll have to talk to him about it. I know he thinks they're cool. I think that would be fun. Play some fighting games. It's tough though, because you gotta when you're playing with your kids, you can't just dust them every single time. That's no fun. It's no fun for the kids. So when I play Street Fighter V, I think the Beast comes out, and I'm like, yes, I'm gonna destroy you. And he's like, Dad, I just wanna play Minecraft. So I don't know. Think of some way to make it fun. So I'm at a point where I'm looking up what are the good Sega Dreamcast, or not Dreamcast, what are the good Sega Saturn games? What are they? Because that's pretty much my list. I believe Bomberman, right? Wasn't there something special about Bomberman for the Saturn? Apart from the number of players who can play at the same time. Because that, hey, you can play 6 players or 9 players or 20 players or however many. I imagine what it would have to top out at 12, right? 2 6-player adapters. I don't know. I remember there was something special about Bomberman on the Sega Saturn. Now, I have played a lot of Bomberman with my kids. But I've got 2 kids, so I don't know. I don't need a special rig to play Bomberman with them because there's only 3 of us. My wife doesn't want to play. She plays some games, but Bomberman's not in that list. We got it for the PS3 and we got it for the Wii, so I think we're good on Bomberman. I don't know. I got to do a bit more research and make sure I'm not missing something. But that's also like a really expensive game, right? Bomberman for the Saturn. I don't know. Once again, this is like the pitfall of dealing with stuff that I don't really know about, and it can cause problems. You got to be careful about taking information for granted. You got to really go back and look before dollars are spent. It's an exciting time, though. It really is. Meanwhile, over at GOG.com, their summer sale is out. Now, being a digital distro guy, these are always like big events for me. We got the GOG sale, and I'm sure the Steam sale is not far behind, right? It can't be. And then I don't know. My knee-jerk reaction would be to sit these out so I can get Sega Saturn stuff. But I'll probably end up getting a little something anyway. I was looking at the GOG sales last night, and they've got the Anno games, which I kind of wanted to try. I've never played one of those before. And the way they were explained to me was, well, they're like, they're sort of like SimCity, except there's competition, right? You have a ship, it's like a flagship, and then you sail it somewhere, and then you start a city. Almost like Civilization. You start with one unit, and then you get a big empire based off of that. SimCity with a little competition. And I think that sounds like it'd be fun, right? Somewhere between SimCity and Sid Meier's Civilization. I think that'd be a good time. Those games, at least the first 3 or whatever they are, 3 or 4 of them are all on sale. I think they're like $3 a piece or something like that. So I looked at those, and then I looked at, I like old racing games. I think racing games, I think they don't make racing games like they used to anymore. These old arcadey sort of games. And I really like them. There's a lot of them on sale right now. Let's see, the Ultima games, I think the Ultima packages are like 89 cents a piece. So I looked at maybe getting Ultima 4, 5, and 6. Just cuz. What else? Divine Divinity is 60 cents. Now, full disclosure, I tried Divine Divinity a couple of times, and it was okay. I thought it was all right. But this is a beloved game, at least by the retro PC crowd. So whenever it goes on sale like this much, I usually try and toss it a mention. I look at a game like that, and I think it should be like action, like a Diablo kind of game. But it's basically like something that looks like Diablo, but it's way more role-playing and very little action. Very little. But people say it's the 2D Skyrim. If you can get into that role playing, it's supposed to be an awesome game, like top notch, 60 cents experience. So that's out there. Divine Divinity, and it had a sequel called Beyond Divinity, which is also 60 cents. Lots of GOG games on sale. I mean, sales in the PC realm, they happen all the time, so it reaches a point where I don't know how newsworthy it is, but this is the big one for the year. This one, and it's the biggest one until wintertime. It comes around again. But they're giving out Xenonauts, right? That's pretty cool. Xenonauts was free. I got that. It's pretty awesome. And that's GOG. Alright, so what would I do if I was absolved of all responsibility and I could go back and play all the games I want and do whatever? Well, I'd fire up the Sega Saturn, and I'd go a couple of quick rounds with Virtua Fighter 2. Now, Virtua Fighter 2, full disclosure, it loses me pretty quick. Because I don't have a second player, and because I have better retro 2D fighters. But every time I play it right now, I get this rush. It's like, yeah, I'm playing the Sega Saturn. Not only am I playing the Sega Saturn, I'm playing a game I had for the Sega Saturn that I don't think I ever played. I might have played it once back in the day. Virtua Fighter 2 was a big arcade game in those days. I remember seeing Virtua Fighter 2 a lot in the arcades, especially in these special rigs where there was a big projection screen TV, and then probably about 4 feet back from the TV was this a little stand-up rig with some arcade controls. This was a big game. Big game. It's a bigger game than I think people give it credit for these days. So I'd sit down with Virtua Fighter 2 a couple of times just to get settled in. And then after that, I'd probably be messing with my cables in my little TV setup. I've got 2 switch boxes for AV cords, right? So one switch box can hold 4 AV cables, 4 AV inputs from systems, and I got 2 of those set up. So the problem is I have to have the TV on the correct input for the correct switch box. And then the switch boxes are both unlabeled. So what I need to do, and I've been putting this off for a while, I need to draw a map. I need to draw a diagram of which inputs have which systems and which are available. Because right now what I do is if I want to turn on alright, Sega Genesis gets a lot of play. I can get to that one pretty easy. But let's say one that doesn't get a lot of play. I haven't been playing the Super Nintendo a lot. Right? In the last 4 months, I sat down with the Super Nintendo maybe twice. But it's hooked up and ready to go. So if I wanted to play the Super Nintendo right now, what I would do is I would put in the game and I would turn it on. And then I would have to switch the TV to one of the inputs, go through all the switch boxes and look for the picture. If I didn't find it, then I'd have to go to the other input and go through all the switch box switches on that to see if I can find it. It's a pain. And there have been times where it's like, I want to sit down and play the PlayStation right now, but it's set up for the Genesis. I don't feel like doing this switch box madness to get there. I'm just going to find something to play on the Genesis. Right? So it's actually inhibiting what games I'm choosing because it's such a pain. So I think right now I'd put on some hot water for tea. Maybe put some music on, and then I would turn on every single system. Just turn them all on, and then I would start mapping them out. I'd put some sticky notes or something on the switch boxes, and I'd write out what the systems are, because I believe they're both filled now. With the inclusion of the Sega Saturn, I believe every single possible input that I have on that TV is filled. Like totally maxed out. I haven't played my Master System in a while. I think that would be fun. I'd map out the... man, that just hit me like a ton of bricks. I'd like to play the Master System now. I'd map out all the systems, and then I'd sit down with the Master System, play some not Super Hang-On. I don't have Super Hang-On, but actually I do. But anyway, I'd play Hang-On for the Master System. That's a fun game that I had for a while a running high scoreboard on. I don't know if I still do. Great Baseball I like for the Master System. Very stripped down baseball game. Even compared to other 8-bit baseball games, it's pretty stripped down. But I always appreciated that in Great Baseball, when you're in the field and you pitch and the batter hits it up and it's a pop fly, you don't have to run and get that pop fly. The game does it for you. It drives me nuts in games like RBI Baseball when there's like a routine pop fly and you just can't get it because I don't know which one of these fielders I'm controlling. It's a big problem with these old retro baseball games. I think Great Baseball is the only one that really does that perfectly. So, good game in my opinion. I know it's like the classic, the cliche that all of the games entitled Great Something on the Master System are like dog do, but that's a good one. And that's it for me. 23 minutes, man. I haven't had a Vancast this long in a while, and I try to avoid doing it like this because I know I get really rambly, but I've got the Sega Saturn that I'm really into right now, which is like driving me crazy because I'm really into it, but I need to get a hold of more stuff for it. And I have the GOG sales, which are like a big event going on. And we'll just have to see what happens. All right, gang, I'm off to do my day at work. You guys are going back to the one place in the world that I want to be, and that's Panzer Studios. Surrounded by modern comforts, a nice comfortable chair, fans, a TV loaded with video games. Oh yeah, that's where I want to be right now. Enjoy it. I'll see you guys there.
All right, we're going to go back to the Winter Chip 13 compilation and listen to another track. But first, I just want to remind you guys, this is a Patreon-sponsored show, and I want to extend my thanks to the people who are keeping the lights on here. I don't offer these guys a whole lot. I wish I could give them more. All I can offer is early access to the show. As soon as I get it done, it goes up, and they get a copy. And then I also read their names off here in a hall of distinguished gentlemen. And they are Hemrock, James, Sendu, Tecmo Balls, Darabka, Six Health of Fury, and the Cartridge Brothers. Thank you guys so much for supporting. And I hope you feel like you're getting your money's worth. Now, the archive, I made a post about this on the website, TigerClawTV.com. It's still having issues. Gone back to it a couple of times, and I've tried to upload the last several TCRs. They're still not going. So if you want to get MP3 copies of Tiger Claw Radio, the best thing you can do is go to the Podomatic page. There's links to it all over my website. The MP3s are getting put up there. Alternatively, you can use one of these services that will download a YouTube video in MP3 format. I can't think of the names of the websites anymore, but I've used them a couple of times. And then you can use the YouTube link. Stick the YouTube link in, download the show. The advantage being that the YouTube episodes, they stay up forever, whereas the Podomatic episodes, I only have so much web space, so the older ones drop off as the newer ones come in. They stay up for like a couple of months when something goes up on the Podomatic page. All right. I gotta say, this Winter Chip 13 album, I was wrong. I thought maybe it was split down the middle in the fake bit department. This whole thing is pretty legit. This is pretty authentic Chip stuff. Anyway, this track is called Daybreak Groove, and it's from Warlord on the Winter Chip 13 album on Tiger Claw Radio. Alright, boys and girls, we're going back to the Vancast on Wednesday, and this one, I think this one came out well because that morning, just before I left the house, there was one game that I hadn't thought about in many years, which popped up and captured my imagination. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio.
Vancasting on Wednesday morning. You know, I was going to talk about when I was getting everything together to leave the house this morning. I was planning on talking about the GOG sales because I picked up some GOG sale games last night. But while I was walking out the door, something occurred to me. I've been talking a lot about the Sega Saturn. Wasn't there an elevator action game on the Sega Saturn? Come on, Saturn fans. You know what I'm talking about. It's like Elevator Action Returns or something like that. I have no idea the context that this game lives in. If it was import only, if it was, local but expensive. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure there's something like that out there. Because I remember playing for a couple of years in a row at MagFest. I would go with my buddy, and they have a candy cab set up. I mean, they got many candy cabs set up. But they got one set up with elevator action in it. Some sort of arcade edition of elevator action. It's way more slick, modern, and brutal than the elevator action on the NES or the Game Boy. A lot of trench coats, a lot of shooting, a lot of people falling over and going boom. It's a game I enjoy. And it occurred to me that I'm pretty sure that something like that exists for the Sega Saturn. When I was a kid, my older brother had a Game Boy, like the original DMG Game Boy. And I can't remember how long he saved for it, but it was something that he saved up his allowance. Like, my parents didn't buy it for him. He saved up his allowance for quite some time, and he got this Game Boy, and I thought it was like the coolest thing in the world. I got to play it like on rare occasion, but one of the games that he had for it was Elevator Action on the Game Boy. So that was my introduction to that series. Not on the Nintendo, not the arcade game, nothing like that. The Game Boy game. And having played all the different ports, I gotta say the Game Boy game is far and away my favorite. You know, with the exception of this weird modernized version that we play at MagFest. And so Elevator Action is a series I always enjoyed. You know what? And I can't even tell you why. The Game Boy one had like multiple weapons you could pick up, and it had you could shoot out the lights, you know, and it was a bit more varied than the NES game, but it still retained this old cartoony / arcadey art style. It wasn't gritty like the newer ones. So I like that game, and I'm interested to see what exists for the Sega Saturn under that title. But again, here's the problem with me talking about Saturn at this point. I'm talking about a lot of games that, like, I kind of remember seeing that a long time ago, but that's it. That's the extent of my knowledge. There's no Google searching behind this, and I don't know. There's a lot of question marks. So let's go. Oh, hang on. Let's go over to GOG.com for a minute. So the GOG sales are in full swing. The Steam sales start on June 21st, so they're coming up, but not here yet. So last night I hit goal in Weight Watchers. I started at 208.7 pounds, and I got down to 175. Or I didn't hit goal, I hit lifetime. My goal was 184, right? You cross over the 184 threshold at my height, then I'm officially not overweight. So that was my goal, was to be not overweight. Then after you hit goal, you got to stay that way for 6 weeks. And then after that, you hit lifetime, and then Weight Watchers is free from then on. So I hit lifetime last night. I'm down to 175. So that was a big deal for me, right? I'm officially not an overweight person. I'm, still me, but at least I can say I'm not overweight. Which, I haven't been able to say that in a lot of years. Not since I worked, in plumbing back in 2008. That's what I was doing when I just started Tiger Claw TV. I was like in my last years as working blue collar jobs. So it's nice to be a little healthier. I got kids. I'm trying to stay around a little longer. So to reward, here's the thing. I wanted to get something for myself. I wanted to reward myself a little bit, but I couldn't do it with food, right? that's like a slippery slope. You start rewarding yourself with food, and before you know it, you get a box of donuts in front of you. It's a very slippery slope when you're trying to cut down, when you're trying to, live a little healthier. So the GOG sale was going on, so I thought, hey man, here we go. I'll get some GOG games. I'll get, like a bunch of stuff. And that's it. Happy birthday to me. So that's exactly what I did. Now I had a cart all put together from a couple of days ago, or was it yesterday? I guess, I don't know. Recently, I went through every single sale page on GOG, and there was a lot of them, and I added everything that looked even remotely interesting to my cart, and then that was it. And so I had this cart with about $32 in games in it on sale. Now, we're talking about $32 at a time in which, when a really great game can be $1.50. Some games are going for even less. Some of the great games that I have already are amazing deals. Divine Divinity, 60 cents, whatever. I mean, I talked about this in the last Vancast. So I stripped out, I wanted to cut it down a little bit, so I stripped some games out, and I left only the games I really wanted, and I ended up with about $16.50 in my cart, and that's what I bought. So I bought some racing games. I bought these like moto racer games, motorcycle racing, and I bought the Anno games, which I talked about last time as well. So last time I sat down with one of the Anno games, and it's the first time I'd ever played it before. So a couple of things. I was doing this move where, like, I had my laptop open, and I was also like sitting watching TV with my wife, just kind of poking around. That's not the situation you can really learn a brand new strategy game in. So let's leave the caveat that I still really don't know a whole lot about the Anno series, but I played the oldest one just to see what it was like. And there's some things I really dug about it, man. You start out with like these 4 ships, and they're all right close to each other. Like you can see the other 3 rivals like immediately. That's one thing that's very different between this game and like something like Sid Meier's Civilization. Is that immediately there's the fact that you can see the other rivals. There's this immediate sense of let's rush to get a good start. A good Civ player will feel that anyway, but the fact that you can see each other gives that tangible, oh man, let's get this show on the road. We gotta hurry. So you sail your little boat to the nearest shore, and you start building your city, right? Sail to shore, and then there's a button you can press to look for minerals, and as long as there's minerals, then you can lay your flag and start building. I thought that was neat. Building mechanics are pretty cool. And that's really as far as I got, just the look and the feel of the game. I mean, I played it for about an hour, and I was watching TV at the same time, so I'm still in this like tutorial stage. But it's a slick looking game, and I bought 4 of them, and there's a 5th one that's on Steam that's like a way more modern game. So it's another one of these. It's like SimCity, and I've got a few of those, these city builder games. I've got Caesar 3. People say the Caesar games are really good. Tropico. I've got Tropico 1 through 4. I never bought 5. And city builder games, I dig them, but there hasn't been one since SimCity 4 that I've really been able to lay roots with and build big cities. SimCity 4 was, in my opinion, it is in my opinion to date, the best city builder game out there right now that I've played, right? I'm sure that there's Tropico games that are better, because I've got most of the Tropico series, and I haven't dug into that either. I've only really ever played the first Tropico game for a couple of hours. And hey man, if you've never played Tropico and you like city builders, that's a good game. That is a really good game. It's not, it has a bit more of a specialized feel to it. So look at some screenshots and put them next to SimCity 4, and if you're on board after that, then you'll like it. I couldn't sell it to my wife though. My wife really digs these city builder games, and I was like, it's like SimCity, but you're playing more like a communist island kind of thing, like something kind of like Cuba. And she was like, what? That sounds weird and bad. So I don't know. Wasn't her thing, but I can tell you those games are sweet. Let's see here. Yeah, so this is the thing. When I have so little time to play video games, I really get pulled in all directions, right? So right now, I'm still digging the Atari. It was looking at me when I was sitting down last night, but I can't play the Atari and watch TV at the same time. The Atari requires my full focus, even if only for a short period of time. I got another game showing up in the mail, so we'll get back to the Atari probably next week. There was this game, I always want to say Sub Hunt, but that's not the name of it. Sea Wars, I think it's called. Sea Quest. Sea Wars or Sea Quest, I can't remember. There was a high score battle between Duke and Mighty Q Dog, and I think one other person over on Twitter. These guys from the Cartridge Club, they went at it, threw some high scores back and forth. I didn't have that game, so I was like, yeah, let me scoop up a copy of that. Paid like $5. I think it was like $5.25 to get it shipped to my house. And that's not gonna be here for a little while. So I got Atari on one hand, I got my GOG sale games on the other, which had the Anno games, it had some racing games, and also what was the last game I got? Port Royale. I have this game Port Royale 2 on Steam, and I wanted to play that on my underpowered little tiny laptop, but it couldn't quite hack it. It's 3D based, and it's just my underpowered laptop couldn't do it. So I got Port Royale 1 because it was on sale on Steam, which is another game. If you look at screenshots of it and you put it right next to like those early Anno games, they look pretty similar, but Port Royale is way more based on trading. You have a ship, you go out and buy goods, you sail to another port, you sell the goods, you buy new goods, that sort of thing. I equate that game an awful lot like the Patrician series, which is pretty sweet. Patrician games are really good. They're really good, but they're also the most businessy of all business sims out there. So I got Atari, I got these GOG games. I got my Sega Saturn, but let's face it, I need to get some more gear for my Saturn. I got a lot of stuff, so if I went back to my house right now, I wouldn't really know what to play, I gotta be honest with you. Gotta be honest. I got a bunch of new GOG games last night, and I'd probably sit down with that. Now that the TV's off, and I got some time to focus, take a look at that Anno game. And here's another thing about the Anno series. Their numbering system is terrible. It's the worst numbering system I've ever seen in my life. You have the word Anno, and then you got 4 numbers. And I get it, there's this trope where the 4 numbers after it are a year, but they also are digits that add up to 9. I get that. It's weird, but okay, that's fine. But the problem is you get a guy like me who never played that series growing up. I mean, the one I played last night, I think was from 2003 or something like that, or maybe even earlier. And I don't know which is which. I can't tell you which game I played. I can't tell you. If you go to GOG and you look at the 4 games there, I played the earliest one, and I did that so my laptop could handle it. Because, you know, it's not a gaming laptop. That's a problem. That's one of these things where it's like, I don't know. I feel like they possibly hurt their longevity by doing that, but whatever. Alright, I can feel myself starting to slip at this point. It's starting to get a little rambly. I think really what I'd like to do is just go back to my office and get things together. One thing I did get together is this morning I put out a chiptune special, a video game music OST special. And I put this thing together like, I don't know, it's been a while now. It's been sitting on my desktop for like a month. But I didn't know how I was going to handle the release. because I know that kind of stuff, not chiptunes, but actual game soundtracks that appear in games. You release that kind of thing on YouTube and it can cause problems with your account, so it's not going to make it to YouTube, I don't think, unless I release it unlisted, which I might do. I don't know. Yeah, so the problems with that, I didn't know how I was going to release it. So this morning I put it I put it up for the Patreon subscribers just because I wanted to do something with it. I didn't like the fact that I took the time to put this together and it's been sitting unused for a month. So it's up for the supporters. Probably early next week I'm going to put it, let's say Wednesday. So yeah, 7 days from now, next Wednesday, I'll put it up in the Podomatic feed for everyone. And still having issues with the archive. I got on this morning after getting that together. I got on the TCR archive and I was like, all right, we're backlogged by 3 episodes now, plus this chiptune or this OST special. Let's just dump all this in the archive, see if it works. I updated Flash, tried to dump the games or dump the MP3s, didn't work. Same thing is happening. Uploads are saying they're completed. I go to save the file and it says, looks like you haven't made any changes. So I don't know. My next attempt is to put the MP3s on a thumb drive and move them to another computer and do it from there. I don't know what's going on. I have to assume it's some sort of local problem, but you know, what can I do? All right. All that said, man, we're 17 minutes in again. I hope this is. I guess this is going to be another jumbo episode of TCR. I hope you guys like these, because I kind of went for a long time without doing a really long episode of TCR, and now there's going to be 2 of them back to back, so I hope that's well received. It's kind of a risky move now when I can see the TCR numbers starting to slip, but hey man, that's it. If I got something to say, I'm going to say it. That's the way it's got to be, otherwise things go downhill fast. So alright guys and gals, I'm going to send you back to the studio and we'll see what we got. I'll see you there.
Alright. And now it's time, guys and gals, for the fail bag. This is the part where, look, it's just me, it's just you. I'm not a hugely followed type of operation. I've had plenty of videos on YouTube get 5 views and that's it, and that's alright. But that creates this unique situation where all you gotta do is reach out, and we can talk. And these are the people who are taking advantage of that, and that's the fail bag. So let's see what we got. First one is from our old friend Hemrock, who, God bless him, his emails have very often saved the latter half of the show. And we got an email from him, so let's see what he says. Congrats, CF. Happy to hear that you have a working Sega Saturn. And yes, it is working. That is awesome news. You spoke of a few highly valued shmups for the Sega Saturn, such as Radiant Silvergun. However, few know about the shmups hidden inside an inexpensive Japanese exclusive game called Tokimeki Memorial Forever with You. With this Sega Saturn CD, you can unlock 2 shoot 'em up games entitled Twin Bee Time Attack and Scythe. I think that's how you say it. Nostalgic Dan did an excellent job of showcasing these games, and he explains the unlocking process. Check out this video here. If you're patient, you can pick up a Tokimeki Memorial off of eBay for $10 including shipping. Finding bargains for Sega Saturn titles may prove difficult. However, to save some cash, consider purchasing disc-only auctions and Japanese equivalents. I see that you've heard of the legendary Action Replay. This is a great piece of equipment that can be used not only for playing imports, but also functions as a memory card and a cheat device. One word of caution. I had one of those give out on me over a rather short period of time. I can't imagine Sega Saturn equipment breaking on anyone. Sorry, that's me just being a little bit facetious. Let's get back to the email. But I don't know of a better alternative. I agree with you that I would also like to see another console come out besides the big 3. I'm looking at you, Sega. However, I do not have a whole lot of faith in the Atari VCS. Do you think the VCS will succeed? Why or why not? How is this different than the Ouya? May you rest in peace? ? As you've noticed, Sega has yet again released a Sega Genesis collection, this time for the PS4 and Xbox One. However, I just realized that if you already own the Steam version of the Sega Genesis collection, Classics, you now have access to their updated version, which I believe is similar, if not equivalent, to the PS4, Xbox One versions. It's also now compatible with Linux. Huzzah! Shout out to 8-Bit Nintendo. Lo-Fi World is an amazing track. Although, with that said, I'm enjoying your current obsession with fake bit. Here's the weekly Nintendo Switch roundup. The Shaq Fu remake was released earlier this month, and for the record, I think the original Shaq Fu for the Genesis is an okay game. Riding Hero for the Neo Geo was also released earlier this month. Another World is coming out on the 25th. And, oh my gosh, I know I'm going to say this wrong. Lumines of PSP fame will be released on the 26th. Before I go, what are your top 5 obtainable games that you plan on collecting over the next few months? Thanks again for another episode. Keep rolling retro, Hemrock. Hemrock, my man. We got some good stuff in this one. Let's start at the top of the Sega Sega Saturn stuff. Twin Bee Time Attack. That's one that you mentioned was locked inside this Tokimeki Memorial Forever with You game. Is that any relation to the Twin Bee game for the Sega for the TurboGrafx 16? Twin Bee something. And then it had a port on the Famicom, and then it showed up on the American Nintendo with another name. It was like Stinger or Strider. Not Strider. I think it was called Stinger. But any relation? I'll have to check it out. I was playing my Sega Saturn just before I started putting this week's episode together. Good old Virtua Fighter 2, which has a surprisingly crisp picture, more so than I remember it. Because when I had my old Saturn that worked very well, even when I had my last Saturn that only worked for like a little while, those were all on tube TVs, and I played on like a flat screen. So yeah, it worked really well. It's in good shape. But $10, I'll have to check it out. You know what I've been doing? Saturn games show up in pickup videos a lot. So now whenever I watch a pickups video, I'm usually checking out what these things are going for. Kid Thunder Productions, he had a video where he got just like one of those little quick unboxings like I do. But he unboxed I think it was called Strikers 1945 or 1945 Strikers, the top-down shmup, along with one of the Gradius games. And I looked those up, and that's like $120 in Sega Saturn games. But man, that would be fun. As far as, yeah, but you make a good point. That's a lot of pie in the sky, a lot of like really expensive stuff. And if I'm going to spend a lot of money for an expensive disc-based console shmup, it's going to be Sub Hunt for the PS1, because that's my grail, and one of these days I'm going to drop a C note and get one. Yeah, so let's see. So you asked about the VCS, and do I think the VCS is going to succeed? Well, here's what I think. We know based on the Indiegogo, and by the way, if you haven't seen it yet, they wanted $100,000 for the Indiegogo, and they ended up getting $2.5 million. That tells us that consumers also want somebody apart from the big three to make a system. That's what I think. That's what I read from that. Now, the problem is whether or not a system is worth buying. I mean, the practical answer is it really all depends on the games. So they've enticed enough buyers. Now they need to entice the developers. And whether or not it's going to be successful is really going to be based on these developers. Now, there's a lot of exclusivity deals when it comes to console-based software, and that's one of the reasons why I like computers, because those deals are so... Consoles, the whole idea of exclusive games is so anti-consumer. It is incredibly anti-consumer. The concept of, we're only going to sell this game on this platform because we want you to pay the additional entry fee to get this platform in addition to the other platform that you initially chose. It's so anti-consumer. Oh my goodness. So, that being said, a lot of those types of deals are going to block big, recognizable non-Atari titles from showing up on the VCS. So now's the time for them to start thinking outside of the box. They've got to get people making new games, and they got to get it fast. And this was where the Ouya really made their mistake, because if you remember when the Ouya was around, one of the things they did was they took a portion of the Kickstarter that they had, because they also had a wildly successful Kickstarter, and they said, all right, we're going to give $75,000 to the next $75,000 successful Kickstarter. What they should have done was, instead of opening themselves up to fraud, was going to developers behind closed doors. This is what they should have done. Behind closed doors. Now remember, the Ouya was set up so that if you had a game that was based on Unity, you could get a working Ouya port in like 20 minutes. All you had to do was just make sure the controller inputs worked, and then export the build, put it up in the Ouya store. The same was true if you had a Game Maker game. Game Maker and Unity were the two quick port platforms for the Ouya. What they should have done is just reached out to developers who had existing games built on those engines and said, look, we're going to give you this cash bonus to release your game in our store. Cash bonus for your recognizable title, and it's for sale, and you'll get that revenue. That's what they should have done, rather than trying to get, Kickstarter to do it for them, and all the weird bad press that came when a game tried to fund itself so that they could collect that money. I don't know if that would have saved them, because there wasn't a whole lot you could do about how broken their controller was, but that's the kind of thinking that the VCS is going to need to survive. Look at where I'm at right now. I've decided that I'm not going to back the VCS because it's expensive and underpowered, and we don't know what's going to run on it. So I'm waiting for it to come out to see the software, okay? It's entirely possible that could happen. I got to be honest, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't think it's going to be successful, but I'm really rooting for it, man. I really am, because they're going to have to... it's going to be the perfect storm of consumer support and finding system-selling games, which means new intellectual property, because, again, it's not like the new Assassin's Creed or something like that, something that sells. I guess Assassin's Creed doesn't really sell anymore, does it? It's not like there's going to be a huge AAA game that's going to be like, let's get us on the VCS. No. So I don't know how they're going to do it. I really don't know. But at this point, they've gotten a lot further than anyone thought they would. So they have my attention. And yeah, where is Sega when you need them? This could you imagine if Dreamcast 2 came out right now and they called it Dreamcast 2? And it was disc-based. Oh my gosh. Oh man, that would be so great. What better time? What better place than here? What better time than now? Come on, Dreamcast. I want a brand new version of Choo Choo Rocket. Let's make this happen. As far as... Okay, so the next thing you said was, what do I plan on collecting over the next few months? There were a few random Atari games that I had been looking at, but I can see my Atari interest losing traction with the audience, so I'll keep this brief. I want to buy the Towering Inferno for the Atari. I want to buy the Bermuda Triangle for the Atari. And the reason why is because I ordered both those games and they never showed up, and I ended up getting a refund. I still want them, so I'm going to rebuy them. There's also a game called Spider Droid for the Atari that's a little on the uncommon side. The cheapest I found that is like $12, which would make it the most expensive Atari game I've ever bought. Those are a few things that are interested, but above all of those games, I want to get a paddle controller for the Atari. This is something I've wanted for years. I've never had one. I've only been able to use one at MagFest. I want to get one. I already have 5 paddle controller games. Just need to get the controller. Then I'll be all set. Those set aside. Then we move to the Sega Saturn, and there's pretty much the first half hour of the show. That's what I'm after. So I know that's not 5 games, but I hope that's something. I hope that answers your question. Thanks, Hemrock. It's always good to hear from you, man. Hope your life is going good. Let's turn our attention now to the YouTube channel, where we've got some good comments. Probably more than I have in a while. We're going to start with Demez, who used to comment every week. Demez, man, I hope you're doing good. He writes, Don Pachi on Saturn is trash. Huge slowdown, unfortunately. Not tried number 2 yet, can't comment. The official Sega arcade stick is no good either, in my opinion. The stick is very firm, no clicky, and it feels like crap when you move it around. Kind of tiring on the hand as it's so stiff. Takes a lot of pressure to move. Tried it with a couple of shmups, went back to the gamepad, which is saying a lot, as arcade sticks usually are a lot better for my shmupping. The Pseudo Saturn modded 4-in-1 can play any game from any region or CDR as long as the game does not need extra memory. A lot of the upper tier second head-to-head fighting games therefore will not work with it as they need the extra RAM on an unmodded 4-in-1 action replay. Radiant Silvergun is a cool shmup, overhyped in my opinion, but at least it will run fine with a Pseudo Saturn with CDR. Awesome stuff. Shame about Don Pachi, because I was kind of looking forward to playing that. Because I've only ever played Don Pachi, I believe. Unless that was one of the games in the arcade where I couldn't understand the title. I don't know, man. I was looking forward to it. But at the same time, not really, because it was really expensive. I don't know. That's kind of disappointing to hear. But thanks for filling me in anyway. He also writes, fun fact, Halo 1 was also made for the PC at launch too. That's the Halo 1 I played. You know, I knew Halo was on the PC because I played it, not at the time. I played it years and years after the fact. But I didn't know that it was there at launch. And he finally writes, don't get your hopes up. Real games will not come out for the Atari VCS. They have no real shot. $2 million ain't nothing because that won't include funding to actually make games. All will be production and some profit. No games, or at best, maybe they crap out a few small, tiny titles, maybe. Third-party devs are not going to make anything for this. And you know what? I really hate it. I really do. But I think you might be right. And it really sucks. It does. But you know, since this last week, I read that they're also trying to implement a subscription system where you pay to have the internet features enabled. We don't know any details about it, but they wrote it on their Indiegogo page, and that is really disappointing. It's disappointing for a system that was setting themselves up to like really be the champion to break free from a lot of the anti-consumer practices of the big three. And it looks like they're going to do it themselves too. There's no reason they need to charge a subscription fee. There really isn't. Don't charge a subscription fee. Just make games. Just give me some games and I'll buy them, and that's how you'll get my money. Yeah, I find myself saying the same thing a lot when I talk about the VCS. So I think I'm ready to move on. What's on my shelf writes, in regards to Microsoft chucking the contents of their stomach at gamers in the 360 era, it's a wonder why so many stuck with them. They eventually gave every 360 a lifetime warranty. My guess as to why Microsoft had such a hold, I think a lot of gamers were lazy, being dug into the multiplayer community and better deals on consoles that they felt it was a huge hassle to jump ship. In regards to music, the chip flipped stuff reminds me of something I would hear on a PS1 or a Saturn era game like Mega Man 8. It sure is peppy. I also have a casual interest in synthwave. You probably know the bands Mega Drive and Perturbator. They release top-notch stuff. In particular, check out Perturbator's the new Black album, I Am the Night. That is still good stuff. Scare the dullness out of your nabots by flipping the woofers against the wall and make their heads swivel. I'll have to check that out, man. That's really awesome. Yeah, the 360 was a weird time. When did they start offering lifetime support for their 360s? And when did it end? Because now I still hear stories of people who, you know, their old Xboxes are finally going red ring, and I'm sure Microsoft isn't sending them new ones now. My older brother had his red ring like 3 different times or something, and in the end, like they replaced it twice, and in the end they were just like, no, we're not replacing it again. So I knew that there was some sort of on paper guarantee, but it was very limited. At least that's what I came to understand. Again, I was not a Microsoft customer. I have a 360 because Classic Elite sent me one while I was still, while I was in my short stint with them. And that's the only reason I got one. I never actually bought a 360. As far as chip flipped, I think you hit it on the head with the whole PS1 Sega Saturn era music. I think that's exactly what it sounds like. Which is really, it sounds good. I dig it, man. Desm 101, my boy Desm writes at 40 minutes, yes, I have one of those PS TV systems. It kind of sucked until I hacked it. Sony didn't support it worth a crap, and a bunch of Vita games couldn't be played because they refused to patch out parts with the camera, touch controls, etc. But hacked, it's a beast of a system that can play PS1, PSP, Vita, and a ton of emulation. On the topic of Saturn, I think so many games are not worth the insane prices that people pay sometimes. But I agree imports are the smart way to go, just to burn backups and must-haves like Radiant Silvergun, Dodonpachi, Sigoku Blade, etc. Well, I'll tell you, man. I was playing Virtua Fighter 2 just before I got on the air, and I was thinking, it's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what is or isn't obtainable at this point. What matters is that the door is open. Because I've been in this situation, Desmond, where I've looked up games and I'd be like, that looks like a sweet game, and I could pay that price right now, but I don't have the system. And the system was really expensive, and it's like, the gate is open. And that's what's awesome. So I'm looking up Saturn games here. I'm looking them up there. I'll find a deal. You know what I'm saying? There's going to be something. It's not going to be one of these, $200 games, but I'll find something. I looked up. I was curious to see if Saturn had a reproduction market, because I know there's one for the PC Engine, right? The Turbo Duo or the PC Duo, whatever the TurboGrafx 16 Duo is called. There's a reproduction market there. So, I mean, maybe there's something for Saturn, but no, it's just CDR. There's a couple, but it's just a CDR with a printed manual. And it's like, you still need to have your pseudo Saturn set up to use this. And it's like, well, why? What good is that then? So I'm still learning about the Sega Saturn. That's what it boils down to. But yeah, I guess I'm not really surprised to hear about the Vita TV being junk, because I don't think that was released to be a great product. I think it was released to kill the Ouya. I remember when it came out, that was around the time I was talking to Dalamar from Wasted Seconds, and he shot me the link. This is how I found out about it. And what the text of his email was, this is going to kill the Ouya. This is the Ouya killer. I remember those days when I was so vocal about how awesome the Ouya was. And the Ouya was a different story from this Atari VCS. It's a very different story, because you got to remember, the Ouya was setting itself up to be the budget system. The Ouya was only $100, and then you got a controller, you got the system, you got everything, right? So it made sense that there was a lot of junky, crappy little games for it, because that was part of the deal going in. The problem with this VCS thing is that's where they're going to find themselves, and people are going to be paying, $300+ to get there, and it's going to be like, no, I'm sorry, Atari, it's not going to happen. At least the Ouya had Towerfall, and Killing Floor Calamity, and a few other games that were like really good. And then there was not many, but a couple multi-platform games that made it on there. Final Fantasy III and Arcade Pinball, and that was pretty much it. At least there was a couple of games for the Ouya. Problem was curation. You had to go through 100, unplayable games just to find them. But anyway, let's put all that aside. I haven't played my Ouya in a long time. I took a lot of heat for backing that system. I took a lot of heat from my peers, and that's really where I stand now. I just don't want to get made fun of. I'm gonna get if I get behind the Atari VCS now, I'm gonna get bullied, and that scares me. Oh Lord. All right, what are we in? An hour and 14 minutes in? Jeez Louise. Well, boys and girls, that is Tiger Claw Radio for the week. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I I have been enjoying making it because this week and last week were shows where I was really on fire about video games. Be it the Sega Saturn or staying up late playing the Anno games, which has been fun, although I'm still on the first one. And it's been fun to talk about. So, while I still got you, just want to remind you that whatever you're doing out there to survive the week, I want you to know I'm rooting for you. Because I know how things can go. Things can suck. As soon as you pull into work, gotta do another day of this stuff. But look, hang in there. Keep doing what you gotta do, whatever that may be. And I'll see you next week.